Okay, so last Friday, just before 5 p.m. San Francisco time, one of the employees at OpenAI tweeted out that they had just released Swarm, a framework for building, orchestrating, and deploying multi-agent systems. And along with the framework, they also released a post sort of talking about some of the key ideas behind this. Now, sure enough, not too long after this had come out and Twitter had gone kind of wild with people all getting excited over OpenAI releasing an agent framework themselves, they then went on to say that since this started trending unexpectedly, I'm not sure why it was unexpectedly, but since it started trending unexpectedly, Swarm is not an official OpenAI product. Think of it more like a cookbook. It's experimental code for building simple agents. It's not meant for production and won't be maintained by us. So this certainly is an interesting repo in that while it might not be an official OpenAI product, it really does show us perhaps at least what some of the people inside OpenAI are thinking about implementing agents and orchestration systems and stuff like that. And I must say that looking at what they've released, more the actual little blog post that goes along with it, it's very interesting to sort of see what they're thinking and to see how Swarm works and the sort of thinking behind the concepts in Swarm. So in this video, I'm going to go through basically just some of the key concepts behind it. We'll look at a notebook that has some of their code in it. And I've also written some new examples of Swarm so that we can see how it works, what to look out for if you want to implement this kind of thing. And later on in the video, I'll also talk about some comparisons of Swarm to things like LangGraph, Llama Index, some of the other agentic frameworks that are out there. So first off, looking at what they've talked about, Swarm is really about building agents around a couple of key ideas. One of these ideas is routines, and the other idea is handoffs. So basically, routines really are just your kind of system message, defining things clearly with a system message. So that system message will often be in some kind of bullet point, often a numbered bullet point sort of format. And they talk about this as being a list of instructions in natural language. So this is really just good prompting for doing this kind of thing. And the idea is that this will guide the specific agent, not only what to do, but also what tools to use to do that. So often to an agent, you will basically supply in tools. So in this way, you'll actually see that there are a number of key ideas here that are very, very similar to things like Crew AI, of setting up the agent, giving it some instructions, giving it access to certain tools, and then letting it basically decide what it needs. Now, the second idea that they introduced, which I think is really key to this whole idea of a multi-agent system, is this idea of handoffs. So that you build all these small agents that are very good at specific things, with them having their own tools, their own system prompts, that kind of thing. But you also then give them the ability to hand off to different agents. So you might start off with a master agent that can hand off to other agents. And it's almost like those other agents then operating as tools in this. Now, in the blog post, they're going through a lot of this sort of low-level code for doing this. And finally, they end up with saying that, okay, we've built this as a proof of concept, and we're calling it Swarm. And this is what the actual library that they've released is. So let's jump into the code and sort of take it from there. So jumping into the code, the first thing I would say, just sort of recap some of the key things here. And that this is basically OpenAI's test at showing you how to make a very lightweight kind of framework. And this is what sets this apart from things like LangChain or LangGraph, is that really here, the goal is to be as sort of lightweight as possible. Currently, this only works with OpenAI, although I can tell you that having just spent 13 hours on a plane, you can hack this to work with Llama and open models, but you will certainly get mixed success, right? It's built to basically work on the OpenAI models here. And of course, one of the big things that sets LangGraph and even things like Crew AI apart from this, as well as things like AutoGen, etc., is that you don't have the same kind of state going on here. So you've got a different kind of memory. You've really only got the conversation memory going on. And most of the ideas around the agents here built more for things like interactions with the end user. So you don't really see things like reflection steps, like kind of thing going on here. Okay, so again, if we revise the things that are going on here, is that we've got this idea of routine. So a routine is a set of steps, like a list of instructions in natural language. And this is, taken from the blog post. The other key concept we've got is the handoff, of where we're basically got an agent or routine, because really the routines are just instructions for agents. So agents are just made up of these instructions plus tools, etc. And basically handoff is where an agent or routine handing off an active conversation to another agent, much like when you get transferred to someone else on a phone call, except in this case, the agents have complete knowledge of your prior conversation. So that idea of sort of transferring off to a different agent that can then work on what the desired outcome is with its own set of tools, with its own set of features, etc. And then finally, I've put in sort of agents are really just sort of routines plus tools here. All right, so I'm bringing in OpenAI key. So this notebook is basically taken from some of their examples. I fleshed some of them out a little bit more, and I've put some custom ones at the end as well. So the two key classes that you're going to use are basically swarm and agent. So you could think of these in some ways a little bit sort of like crew AI, where your swarm is the crew, and then you're instantiating agents going on. And we see for an agent, we can just give it a name, we can give it instructions. Again, very similar to sort of crew AI in here. And those instructions will then determine, how it responds, because those instructions end up becoming the system prompt for what's going on in here. And we can see this if we instantiate an agent here. We're just going to call it agent. We say you're a helpful agent. And we say hi. And sure enough, what is it going to do? Respond, hi, how can I help you? Right. So really, there's nothing different, here, except that this is just doing a lot of the calls under the hood for the OpenAI stuff. If we want to have a simple routine, we can give it something like, okay, we're going to call this one the sales agent, be super enthusiastic about selling honey. Now I say, look, I'm interested in buying some honey. And sure enough, it goes off, full on about buying honey, right? It's definitely enthusiastic in that case. Now, I would say at this point, these things are really not a routine in the way that they describe it. A routine more will probably have a set of steps and be something like this. So you can see now we've got a sales agent, and we've still got the be super enthusiastic about selling honey, but then we give it a list of sort of steps to execute through. So step 1, get the customer's name, find out their health concerns, allergies, or wanting more energy. Step 3, tell them about healing powers. Step 4, explain a special deal. Step 5, handle any objections. Step 6, close the sale. Step 7, thank and reassure them. Now, it can actually do these things more than, it doesn't need one full turn necessarily to do, 2 or 3 of these different things. But let's see how it goes. So I give it the same sort of thing where I start off just by saying exactly what I said here. But now it's got these steps. So it's going to be much more like, oh, fantastic. I'm thrilled to hear that you're interested in honey. What's your name? I'd love to get to know you a little bit. So you can see now I basically tell it, okay, my name is Sam. And so what I'm doing is just basically taking the messages out and feeding them in. My name is Sam. It says, hi, Sam. It's absolutely wonderful to meet you. Now tell me any particular health concerns. So you can see it's going through the steps that we had here. Sure enough, I tell it I'm jet lagged, right? I've just gotten off a plane, and it says, oh, okay. So then it's starting to now pitch me on how honey can help to beat that groggy feeling. And it's going all in. Now, obviously the answers, because I said enthusiastic, are quite long, etc. here. But you can see that also not only does it tell me, that's great for that, it's telling me now about the 2-for-1 deal. All right. I'm an easy sell. I say that sounds like a good deal. Okay, I'll buy one. So now it says, fantastic news. You're going to love the benefits. And so it's sort of reinforcing the sale. We asked it to do, to basically thank the person and then reinforce the sale. And you can see that this could have been like a loop. I've just put it so that we can see exactly what's going on each time and how we're passing in the messages each time. Now, if we look at the response back, we can see, okay, this is what actually comes back in a response. We can see that there were no function calls going on there. there are no refusals. We can see, all the different things that we're going on in. So that's basically our routine. This is the key thing there. Next up, we've got the idea of a handoff. So this is one of their simple examples of where they make an English agent where you only speak English. They make a Spanish agent where you only speak Spanish. And then they make the ability to transfer to a Spanish agent. And they add that as a function in. So they've got this functions.append, and they're adding that in there. You can see now with the message, and the message obviously in Spanish, it just goes through, and even though we've been sending it to the English agent, because the English agent's got this as a function in there, it can transfer to the Spanish agent. And then that Spanish agent can then take it and respond exactly like what we've got there. All right. So a little bit more sophisticated version of this, just to sort of show you again that if we've given it, I'm going to make a new one called cat agent. And this cat agent, you answer any question about cats, and all answers must end in meow, 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 right? Okay, so the rest is exactly the same. I've even got the Spanish bit, and you can see that if I start up with the Spanish bit, I get the exact same thing. It transfers to the Spanish agent. It gives me a response in Spanish. If I start off, though, now with something in English where I ask about cats, you can see that, okay, now it's going to transfer to the cat agent. And it gives us, when I say, what language do cats speak? Cats communicate with various sounds. Anyway, and it finally ends with meow, 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 right? It's following our system instructions. That shows us that this is the cat agent answering there. What would be interesting is to try one out where you ask it about cats in Spanish and see which it sends to there. All right, the next concept up is the idea of injecting variables. So we've got our agents. There are going to be certain times we want to inject various variables into things. So if you think about, this is where we're putting things in the context window. So that can be information about a user, that can be that kind of thing. And by injecting that in, then the model can use that to basically respond back. So this is the same sort of concept as RAG, used in lots of different things here. So you can see here we've got this sort of instructions where it will basically we pass in this context variable that we're going to set down here. This is from their example. It's going to basically pass that in, and it's going to inject that into the prompt. So let's look at how that's actually done. We define our agent. Agent takes in our instructions, which is going to be a sort of system prompt that just says you're a helpful agent, greet the user by name, and then we're going to pass in the name in there. And then we've got these functions for printing sort of account details, etc. And then at runtime, when we're actually running this, we can now pass in the messages, the agent, and any context variables in. So the context variables here, we've passed in our James and user ID. They got injected in there. And then with the help of the F string, they're actually going to be injected into the system prompt there, or at least the name is going to be injected into the system prompt. At the same time, this tool of print account details is in. So it also will have access to these. So you can see that now when we basically say, right, hi, we get a response back. Hello, James, how can I assist you today? And then we say, print my account details, and just says account details, James 123. That's coming from the function. And then the output of going back to the agent is saying, hello, James, your account details have been successfully printed. If you need any further assistance, feel free to ask. All right. So this is an example, a very simple example of injecting a tool in there with the function calling, etc. All right. Now expanding on this, you've got function calling. So the standard sort of get weather thing in here. Again, the instructions for an agent, we tell it what tools it's got access to. And you can see that this time we're not injecting any context variables. We're just basically getting it to use the tool. And sure enough, it can decide itself that it needs to use the tool. We're running this agent. It then basically passes this, uses the tool, and then prints out the result of that tool. All right. So in their examples, they give you some nice examples of how to print things as you go along. So they've got some just nice things where you can see what's going on, so that we can then basically set up a simple chat system where we've got, hi there, hello, can I assist you? What is the weather in Paris? Then in this case, we've got no tools in there. So it's going to respond back and just say that, okay, can't help us. If we give it some tools though, now we've got the function for basically getting the tools. We've got the function for sending an email, and we've just got some helper functions in here to basically see what's going on so that we can, print these things out, and to basically set up this loop that we're going through and running the loop here. Now you can see when we run it through and say, hello, how can I assist you today? And this is now the weather agent that we're actually talking to. Even though we wouldn't know this if we weren't printing this out. I can ask it, what is the weather in Paris? It says, okay, get weather. It gets the weather and then basically gives it back. Is there anything else you want to know? Okay, ask it, do you sell honey? Don't sell products, but I can help you find where to buy honey. Okay, and I said, okay, where can I buy honey? Now, this has only got two tools, right? It's got the tool of weather, and it's got the tool of sending an email. So when I ask it, about where to buy honey, all the information that it's giving me here is from the language model. It's not from a tool. It's not from anything like that. So if you give it a tool and you've got good instructions in your tool, then it will basically use the tool as opposed to just going to the language model for the results back, etc. All right, they have another example using a few different tools here of basically processing a refund, applying for a discount, and they set up a few different agents of going through this. So you've got this triage agent, a sales agent, refunds agent, and then you've got these transfer to these things. Now you can see that this transfer to has got a description that's again like a tool, because the transfer tos are actually just tools. And we can see that here. If we look at the triage agent functions, we can see that sure enough, it's got these tools there, and we can append back these transfer back to triage here. And we're appending that both to the sales one and to the refund one. So obviously we don't need to append that to the triage agent itself. It's not going to transfer it back to itself. It's going to transfer to the other ones. And so we've got just these simple things here. And we can see that the refunds agent actually has some tools there, being process refund, apply discount through this. If we now just basically set it up so we can see what's going on again, run the loop, we can see now when we ask it, hello, how can I assist you today? I need to buy honey. Okay, transfer to sales. I'll connect you with our sales who can assist you with purchasing honey. Hang tight. Hello. Right. So I want to see, is it going to start again like up here? And so now it's not, right? Because we're talking to a different agent. So now it's like, are you ready to dive into the wonderful world of bees? We can do that. Okay. And now I say to it, okay, I bought some bad honey. I need to refund. Now it can't transfer us directly to the refunds, remember? Because basically this one, we added transfer back to triage from sales agent. We never added transfer to refunds agent, right? Like that one, only the triage one has got. So sure enough, it transfers back to the triage one. And this one now automatically just says, I'll connect you with our refunds department. They will assist you. Now I'm like, hi, I need a refund. It says, okay, I'll connect you. Again, it's the triage one is there, and it's transferring us to the refunds agent there. Now we go through the details of actually being able to run those functions in there. So you can see that it needed, certain things in a right format. So it needed an item ID. And it basically says that I should provide the item ID as item underscore something. When I do that, then it worked it out. Okay. And it gives us this mock sort of refunding the item because bad honey. And then it processes the refund. So this is a simple example of doing all of that. All right. So another example of this is with their airlines example. So now you can basically escalate to agent, and we can pass in a reason for escalating something. So this is again a tool in this case. So it's showing us that, okay, even doing this, we can pass in like a variable in there. And we've got valid to change flight. And so this would be a check to see like, can they change the flight? Then we've got the actual changing of the flight. Then we've got instantiate a refund, instantiate flight, credits, etc. And here. So this is now we're starting to get into quite a number of different tools in there. We've also then got multiple longer prompts for doing this. So for dealing with the different things, you've got a variety of different prompts in. Finally, you've got the different transfers. So transfer to flight modification, transfer to flight cancel, transfer to flight change, transfer to lost baggage. And then Finally, we're basically setting up our agent. So we've got this sort of triage agent is the agent basically handles things when they first come in and decides how to delegate them and stuff like that. So you can give this, the triage agents is basically kind of like your delegation agent. It's got the right to basically transfer to flight modification or transfer to lost baggage. We've got the flight modification there with instructions. It can transfer to flight cancel, to transfer to flight change. And then we've got the flight cancel agent. This has basically got a much longer sort of prompt here. And this has got all the tools that it can basically use in this as well. All right. And then we've got baggage, etc. We've got the same helper functions for just printing out what's going on. One of the big differences here this time, though, is that we're now injecting context variables. So you can imagine a customer's logged in already. And at this point, they want to look at the customer ID, get their variables and stuff like that. And that's all basically stored in their account information. So we can inject that to anywhere. We've also got things like their upcoming flights, that kind of thing. Flight number, flight time, that can. All right. So we start off there. I say basically, hi there, how can I assist you? And you can see that it's getting the various information there. I say to it, when does my next flight leave? Sure enough, it says your upcoming flight leaves at 3 p.m. on 21st. So that matches just what we've got right there. From LaGuardia to Los Angeles, anything you can say, okay, I need to change it. So now we can see what it's actually doing is it's going through the different roles to basically get me to this. And you can see we've gone through transfer to flight modification, transfer to flight change. Now the customer or the end user doesn't actually know that we've passed down through these different agents as we've gone through this. And then it says, okay, could you please verify flight details you want to change and the reason for the requests? I say, I want to change to 22nd of May. I don't give it a reason for a request. I was curious to see, okay, how it's going to handle that. It basically comes back and says it's valid to change. So you could imagine in that one, it has some kind of like conditional logic that where it says you can only change if this and this can. Then it says, okay, your flight availability change. I suggest looking for a flight 1 day earlier. Would you like me to check the availability for that day? I said, no, I want the 22nd. So it didn't pick up here that well that I wanted the 22nd. So I reinforced that here. So, okay, now it's picking it up. I'll check for availability on the 22nd for your flight. Please hold a moment. It says, I've checked availability on a new flight departing May 22nd. We do have seats available. There might be some fare differences, etc. It goes through all that. Do you want to go ahead? I say, yes, please. So now it's gone to the tool for change flight. Then it comes back and says, your flight is successfully changed. Is there anything else you can assist today? Now I say, when does my flight now change? I actually meant, when does my flight now leave? But anyway, it worked out what I meant. It says, your flight is now scheduled on May 22nd. If you have more questions further, please let me know. I say thanks, and it basically decides its case resolved here. So you could imagine that I could have complained about baggage, a whole bunch of different things. So this is fleshing it out a lot more with this kind of. All right. So the last one is basically a custom agent for doing search that I put together. So this is just using DuckDuckGo search, free search tool. I've made a couple of different tools here. And this is from the idea, and you could definitely flesh this out even more as custom search tools in here. But I've got two key sort of searches here. Basic search, that's going to return 5 results, and a news search that's going to basically do searches just for news. So this performs a DuckDuckGo search and returns the results as JSON. Actually, we're converting it back to a string. We're then going to, the news one does a news search and looks for things only in the last week that have been there. Now my search agent, we're going to pass in, the time as well. So like today's date. So I can basically tell your helpful agent always rephrase responses from tools. Now this is key. I will show you going through this. If we come down the next bit, we've just got the standard sort of things for setting up the loop, stuff like that for going through this. And I'll show you some interesting things here. So if I say, what does the internet suggest I see in Paris? All right, so you can see that it's gone for basic search. And sure enough, it's done the search. We've got this back from the tool here. But then the search agent is rephrasing that into something that it can basically talk about. Here are some popular attractions and activities to consider over Paris. So that's showing you using basic search. If I ask it, what is the news in Paris today? Okay, sure enough, now it's gone for a news search. Now, one of the things I'd say you want to be careful about are the actual instructions that you pass up here. Sometimes if you just had the instructions like this, it will just give you the output of the tools back and won't necessarily go back to the rephrasing step. Really what we're doing here is similar to the video that I made around building a sort of React with function calling. This is doing the same kind of thing. And you always want it to go back to the reason to basically give you out the responses back in there. So if you compare what they're calling a triage agent in here, I would call that the sort of the reason in here. So hopefully that gives you an introduction to Swarm and more importantly, the sort of ideas behind Swarm. One of the things I do really like about this is it's really lightweight compared to something like LangGraph. It makes it much easier for you to see what's going on for the various things. It makes it easier to define tools and to basically implement. In many ways, it's giving you a lot of the sort of ease of use of something like Crew AI, but giving you still much more on the rails of something like LangGraph, where you're really guiding, it can only go from here to here kind of thing. With the whole handoffs issue is a really nice way of doing this. It's still lacking a state system, so you could end up getting into loops quite easily with this without any kind of state checking, etc. And you also don't have the sort of standard sort of memory system that you would have with something like LangGraph in here. But anyway, it's certainly an interesting framework, and it's also cool to see that if this is representing what OpenAI is thinking. Unfortunately, I think this is only one group inside OpenAI. It's necessarily the research group inside OpenAI that are actually behind this. But I do like the sort of concepts in here. And it gives us some nice things to define these routines and handoffs of basically how they could be applied to building a bunch of different types of agents and stuff like that going before. I'm definitely a fan of the whole sort of cascading thing, that you don't stuff as many tools into one agent. You try to limit the number of tools each agent has, but you then cascade from one agent down to another agent, down to another agent, so that when you need something very specific, you can go through this. And there were some nice examples of that in the airlines example that you can play with and see that they've got in here. All right, on the Patreon, I'll put up some more detailed examples, and I'll talk a little bit more about how some of these concepts apply to things in production much better than some of the challenges that you're going to see with other agent frameworks as well. Anyway, as always, if you've got any comments or questions, put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about Swarm, what you've tried out, that kind of thing. If you found the video useful, please click like and subscribe, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye for now.